welcome back, everybody, to the Collector Series on WTCtv. Now, I'd like to go back 5 or 6 years in wrestling card hobby. Before the big COVID burst, when, I don't want to call it the dark ages, but, before the current explosion. And back then, the wrestling card content landscape was an entirely different ballgame. Even Tony, you were missing in action for several years there. WTC
Yep.
hadn't been updated in some time. And basically, the only content that we had were the blowout forums, where guys like Dave and Rob would tend to talk about vintage stuff, and then the WTC forums, which was essentially for years and years just Chuck and Nick and Armand talking about Tops Now. Um, I would chime in every so often when Price Guide had a new update. That was about all that was going on. Now there were wrestling videos on YouTube. But there wasn't sort of a series, there wasn't anything done by one guy with any sort of regularity. So it was a virgin landscape for our next guest, the true pioneer of wrestling card content on YouTube, Mr. Zhan Mourning. Um,
What's up, Zan?
Howdy,
yeah,
partners.
yeah, nice to see you. This is kind of a Worlds Collide reunion with you guys.
A bit, yeah.
Bit.
What we're going to
Yeah.
talk about is we're going to talk about the sort of early days of wrestling card content, how you grabbed the bull by the horns and how you noticed a market gap and you took it upon yourself to start creating content. And I remember the very first time I saw a couple of videos of yours, and this was before Tony, you and Porto had that fateful morning where you sat down, and none of us, none of us really had anything to sort of bite into until you came along, Zan, and started preparing this content with regularity. So let's start there. Let's talk about how you decided to take it upon yourself to sort of fill the hole that existed at the time with your first YouTube videos, and talk to us about how it sort of mushroomed and exploded from there.
Sure. Started originally by just watching content for other things. And I, like you, was like, let me go back even further. Like 2017, I go to my LCS, and it actually started with the Top Slam digital app. That in combination with Madden Ultimate Team, both of those are digital platforms that based on cards. And I was like, this is really fun to collect these digital cards, or in the Madden game, use them on the game. I'm like, what happened? I'm going to go buy some physical cards again, because, since I was a kid, 87 Tops, that's like the first thing I can remember. I would buy wrestling cards periodically, buy a blaster. I remember buying a couple of the TNA blasters, like 2006 to 2008. I remember Walmart putting together some like random, I don't know, kind of grab bag boxes that had multiple wrestling card packs, and I'd buy those occasionally, but I never really took it that serious. But when I started buying, I started viewing a lot of the sports card content, and of course I like sports, but it was always wrestling. I start finding these wrestling cards in these big 4 and 5 row boxes that I'd buy out, keep the stuff I want, sell the stuff I don't want. Over the course of that, I start running into products that I don't know what it is. Like, what is a parallel? Like, what is PSA? I don't even know what that is. So I start like doing research, which leads me to content. As I'm going through the content, I'm wondering, why is nobody doing this for wrestling cards? Like, there are wrestling videos out there, people showing off their collections, which helps. People doing box breaks, which whatever. But there was nobody, like, I guess, making people think, or putting out just opinions out there to make people think about the way they collect, why certain sets are the way they are. And I was like, you know what? Also, same time, Gary V. Discovered Gary V, and I was off to the races. Gary V has always been like, if you've got something you want to say, you want to talk about it, put out content. Don't worry about what people think or say. Just do it. Hit the record button. Don't worry so much about all the equipment and the software and whatever. Just do it. And that's what I did. I started on my cell phone, and I was like, well, this will be cool. And if I can get a bunch of subscribers, that'll be great. And build a community around it, and just mainly give people a resource out there, whether they love it or hate it, just something to make people think. So I just contributed to, really getting back into the hobby and Gary V.
Nice. So how many, it's been several years now. You've gotten your YouTube channel to over 1,000, which is the magic number. And Tony and I are working on WTC to try and get there as well. How many episodes has it been? It's been like well over 100 at this point.
Several hundred, yeah. Because
Several
for
hundred
for the first few years, I was doing at least 2 videos a week. And then, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but as Tony knows, the more stuff you start doing outside of just content, the harder it is to put out.
Right.
So
Sure.
I think I've only missed maybe 1 week of not having anything. but I'm still at a minimum trying to do at least one video a week. And so we've been going on for like 4 or 5 years now.
And you've kept that pretty consistent, right?
Yeah. Yep. Trying
Now,
to at least every Tuesday and Thursday. I'm either going to have a video out one of those nights or both.
right. And Wrestling with Cards is the channel that we're talking about.
Yes. Yep.
But also, you guys together did something that ran for a couple of years, almost 3 years, which was the World Collides, and that was meant to be just an audio-only podcast, I believe, right? I know
Yes.
you've repurposed them and put them out on YouTube to see your smiling faces, but that was an interesting one because when you and Tony started that, that was around the time that we started, Tony, you and I, doing our recaps and saying, okay, Zhan is doing this and this, and we identified, from a pricing point of view, from a market point of view, not that you weren't doing your market videos already.
Yeah, totally different thing though.
Correct.
You guys are doing something totally different.
I was looking to do a deep dive into specific areas of the hobby, price-wise and stuff.
Yeah.
And around that same time, you guys started doing the Worlds Collide podcast. Talk about where that idea came from, and Tony, you chime in about that time in the hobby for you guys as well.
I think I came to you with the idea, did I not, Tony?
You did. You sent me a text one day and said you had an idea and wanted to know what I thought about it. And I said, sure. And you ran it by me because all you do is text. You don't ever talk on a phone.
It's not totally true.
I think in the years, I've spoken to you on the phone like 3 times.
Yep. I remember the first time I got a phone call with you was like immediately when I hit pay now, when I bought that Kevin Nash 1/1, the first card you did.
Oh yeah.
Which is still in the collection. I love it.
You know what though? Talking is overrated. I wrote a price guide with a guy that I never spoke to.
That's true. Yeah. Valid point.
Yeah, but things get kind of misconstrued and just for a text like that. It's like, why are you yelling at me? It's all in caps. I'm like, I'm not yelling. I'm just trying to get my point across. So yeah, that's how we I think you came up with the idea and you presented it to me.
I got the idea from again, sports card content. Like there were different personalities coming together. Sometimes it was 2 people, sometimes it was like 5, and everybody had a different opinion. And it was always fun to hear like that sometimes you would hear an argument, but it was mainly just a discussion, likes, dislikes, questioning why is this the way it is. And I just thought it would be cool. Once again, nobody's really making, in my opinion, nobody's really making wrestling card collectors think. And that's what I was out to do. Like, I'm not saying do this, don't do that. I'm right, you're wrong. We know that's how a lot of these wrestling collectors are. Sorry. But, it's just to make people think, like put the opinion out there. And does that help people in their journey of collecting? Maybe it changes their way that they're collecting for the better. Maybe they realize they weren't doing something right. And all of a sudden it grows their collection by just a tidbit of information that's put out there.
Yeah, like Tony, we did, or you did in the early days of WTC, a lot of roundtables, but I know, Zhan, you were the first guy to do that. And I particularly liked that because it was the first time you saw a bunch of us faces interacting as if we were at a bar or at a wrestling event talking about cards,
Yep.
which I thought was excellent. Now, before we go back to Wrestling with Cards, I just want to stick on Worlds Collide because it was the 2 of you guys. That had you had the after dark component of that you guys would record in the middle of the night, and that's where it always got interesting for me. That's where you touch some of the more darker subjects, some of the more sexier subjects.
Tony's travels. That was my favorite.
Yeah, it was very interesting because you had a lot of different sort of angles for content. I really enjoyed what you would do with certain guys, and you'd pick not obscure guys, but Brutus Beefcake. Let's talk about his cards and what he's done.
This is your card.
Yeah, this is your card. I remember the Hoarders episode in particular. I'm going to ask you what your favorite episodes were in a second, but that one was one where we were all talking the next morning because you laid it all out on the table and you guys put forth some pretty strong opinions, and I agreed with it to a point. But that's the kind of stuff that I enjoyed. That kind of content, that sort of agitated, and like you say, you're just trying to get people thinking, and you're not trying to say I'm right and you're wrong. And this is and that's what I've always appreciated about your stuff, Zhan. It's presented very well, but you don't come off like others in the hobby as a know-it-all.
No, I don't know. I don't know hardly anything.
There is to know about this. And if you don't like it, I'm blocking you.
Yeah.
If I made one thing abundantly clear over the years, is I know absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Humility
is a good thing when you're a host of these things. And, like today you've got the spotlight, you're not asking the questions, you're doing the answering. But as a guy, because I've gotten used to it over these last few episodes with Tony, you want to ask questions and you want to get at things that sort of uncover truths, but don't sort of hit sore points. You know what I mean? And that's tricky with sometimes, and again, your guests were always pretty mainstream, and you did a fantastic job of bringing new guys into the hobby. Like a lot of people that I've subsequently interviewed or that have become a part of Tony and our 100 card set collector series. These were a lot of guys that you first uncovered, guys like Curator Dan
Yeah.
and a lot of these characters that you made contact with in the field and brought them into the wrestling card world. Um, so that was very cool too. So definitely your sort of immediate claim to fame. We're going to talk more about Beast Mode and Karrion Kross and all that stuff. But your immediate claim to fame is the fucking fantastic job that you've done, brother, on these
Thank you.
shows over these last few years. And I say that with all sincerity, being a guy that's doing the same thing now. I was a guest on your show several times. You always had me and Chuck on to sort of the oddball series and the weird stuff, and that was sort of our lane within your content. But I always found that you got it, and Tony and I have talked about this before. The Zan gets it insofar as how he presents his content, insofar as how he interviews his guests, and how he puts it all together. So tell me, in all the years of doing it, what's your favorite or a couple of your favorite episodes and or guests on the show?
I want to go back to Worlds Collide, actually. My
Okay.
favorite episode, because it was something that, again, an idea I ran by Tony, and I was like, I wonder if we can do this. And that is the virtual wrestling card show we
Yeah,
did
that was so great.
Right.
over the course of 2 nights.
But you didn't do it again
Having
last year. I was hoping there'd be a follow-up a year later, and it didn't happen.
that, yeah, and we can get to that. Like that has a lot to do with why, like, we're, maybe Worlds Collide isn't doing anything right now. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind that, but basically, we got a whole bunch of people lined up. We got time slots lined up. It was almost like, it was almost like a big concert festival. That's how I looked at it, because everybody had a time slot.
Mhm.
So we bring a guest on, and you can watch all of this. It's on the WTC channel. If you go into the live section, you can see this, and it's on my channel as well. But we had different guests come on. They'd show off things they had for sale. We had a live chat going on, so people could, like, claim things as it was getting shown off. Or this actually happened a lot. People were getting in contact with each other after it, like, maybe they watched it in a replay like 2 days later, and they're like, oh, I need that card or I need that set. They'd get a hold of them, and it was like a community building thing while providing some entertainment and the opportunity for people to sell things. And my favorite part on there was, this is a whole different discussion about community, is getting two members of the Card Foundation podcast as a unannounced guest at the end, which
I remember the third man.
we were missing a third man, and the next thing I know, Tony turns on us.
Yeah, I remember that. I'm the third
So,
man. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
fuck,
So to have those guys on there was great, because and I think this is still, somewhat talked about to this day, is that there's like rivalries between like groups or content creators or breakers, and like you can't work with anybody, and it's just not true. I mean,
Not true at all.
no, I want as many different voices and as many different platforms to work together and communicate as possible.
Yeah, we're the same way. Like you know our story, 100%. We represent the hobby, not a section of it, not the guys we like, don't like. And we've done that before. We've had guests like Mike the Cleaner, for example, and that caused a bit of internal friction amongst the WTC family. But it's important for us to get that content out there, because
Sure.
we're not the arbiters of what's right and what's wrong. We're just the reporters. And I've always said that to Tony. It's like, look, I got my opinions. I keep them to myself. It's like, for example, there's been a lot of talk about Vince lately, and you notice I haven't chimed in on any of it. I'm not going to. I'm not going to speak about that publicly at all.
Right.
I would say probably, and we'll get to Tony's sort of favorite thing. Last year you did the iconic 25, and I thought that was a fucking fantastic idea. And I love the way
Thanks.
you did it. You made it completely iterative with the community, so that it wasn't your bias. That
Yeah,
was
I didn't vote at all on that.
no, and you didn't even vote. And then
Yep.
you were kind enough when it was all done, because I had always wanted to do on the price guide site, the top, something along those lines, and then here you come and lay it out perfectly for me. And it's legit because it's community driven,
Yeah.
100%. So it's not Paul's thoughts, it's not Tony's thoughts, it's not Zan's thoughts, but this is what we as a collective have agreed. And I'm hoping that you're going to do an update to that this year, so that
We'll see.
I can do the same thing. Well, I think it's going to be a sort of fluid list, isn't it? Like
Oh, I would say
things are
so,
going to change,
because
opinions are going to change, like the rock card might not be as high up anymore,
yeah.
as Vince, as Brock, or whatever, times change, opinion change. So for me, that was that series, because you did it over a series of 3 or 4, I think, episodes.
Yeah, so, yeah, it was a
Yeah,
multi-part. Yeah.
yeah, and I thought that was great.
Thank
Tony,
you.
what about you? What do you remember about wrestling with cards, and what have been some of your sort of memories and favorite episodes.
Me?
Tony? Yeah, you.
Oh,
You were
oh,
on there often
for
enough.
oh, for
Talking about it.
Worlds Collide or
Yeah, both.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. What's your
um,
experiences with Zan? Because you guys aren't together now, and it's based on scheduling and just, and that's not to say
it's
you won't be back together again in some
it's
capacity.
I don't know, it's interesting. We did a lot of different things. A lot of times I would just come up with ideas and I would send him like these multiple text messages, like just out of nowhere. Sometimes it'd be like 11 o'clock at night, whatever it is, and I just like, hey, got these ideas, boom, 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 and he goes, add it to the list.
Yep,
Added
I'd
it.
screenshot it and kind of decipher it into like a good title, and then we would just break it down from there.
Break it down. And so like the first time we did the this is your card, it was just an idea like, this is your life. And it's supposed to be like, this is your card. And we just randomly picked British beefcake. And it's like, of all people to pick. But you know what? We had fun with it. It was memorable to me because it was something like I could see this going on forever.
Right.
We
Yeah,
could
you could have.
we could take any superstar and just done something. And it's nothing like it was a little more broken down than what it was like. You listen to Card Foundation and they talk about their rookie cards like that. So they break down, they give you a list of all these early cards. We covered a bit more than that. We would go earliest card, what could be the rookie, what's our favorite, best designs.
Worst picture, that was always the most fun
Worst
one.
picture's great, yeah. Worst picture's always great. And then our fantasy one's always great. I always had fun time trying to think of something really cool and interesting when it comes like, there's spare no expense. You have unlimited use to any graphics you want and memorabilia you want. It's a total fantasy card. What would you make? That was always fun.
Yeah.
And the first time he hit me up with an After Dark thing, I'm like,
well, those were the
what?
ones
What?
they were kind of like, Joey Graben when he gets on these things late at night and he's had one too many. I think that your After Dark ones, you started to let yourself go a little bit. And I enjoyed them, because I think
at
you were
first
letting
After
loose
Dark
a
we
little
did.
more.
I think the first After Dark we did was, I think it wasn't like e-wrestling.
Yeah, it was like booking the e-feds and stuff because I had very little experience in that. And I don't even know what caused that. We were talking about it one day, I think through text or something, and I'm like, we got to talk about it.
We got to talk about it. Like, this is going to be an After Dark. What?
Yep.
What do you mean? Like, it's kind of about cards and it's still got wrestling involved in it somehow, but it's not really. So it's like an After Dark special.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
I had a lot of experience in that.
You guys used to do them a bunch at a time, if I recall, Tony. You used to tell me that you'd connect with Zan. I'm with Zan tonight, and I know you'd be like 3 hours, and you'd be banging out 4 episodes. And I get that now with scheduling, that's sometimes that's the only way that you can put them together. It's nice to sort of do everything just in time as things are happening in the world, but sometimes you don't have that luxury.
Yeah, that was one drawback, is there was like news or announcements or releases that we couldn't necessarily immediately react to just based on the way that we recorded and had to schedule it and everything.
I think Adam's kind of taken on that responsibility of getting on there right away. When something big happens, be it in the industry, be it with Panini or whatever, if it's huge, he'll invite Tony and I to join him. If it's just a quickie, he'll get on there and do the short strokes.
In the early goings, that was something when those news things started breaking out in the early goings, that was me reaching out to Adam to get him to come on and do so like that. I said, we need to get together and do this. So we would jump on and do that. And then he kind of just ran with it.
Yeah.
And that's what you get when you're networking and you're building a community. Like, again, me and Adam have different opinions on things, and we have some same opinions on things, but the fact that, I could interview him, he could interview me. I'm sure you guys have different opinions than Adam on some things, but yet you reach out to him because he can help the community get that news out there about the latest thing that maybe you guys can't.
Everybody means well, you know what I mean? And I keep coming back to that, we're all brothers in arms, we collect these things. So we have something massive in common that a lot of people outside our world wouldn't get. You collect wrestling cards, what? But we collect them, and it's a big part of our lives. Like, we live and breathe this shit every day, pretty much, guys at our level of the hobby that are working on content and that are collecting and that are really entrenched in it. So for us, it doesn't behoove us to sort of take our personal opinions and bring them to this forum. For me, it's always like, I don't agree with this, but I'm still going to chat with you about it. Right.
Yeah.
And if I really disagree, to be honest with you, I disagree with some of these guys a lot, and I take it to them personally. I don't like to go onto Twitter and take an issue with something that Peck has said or that Adam has said or Mike the Cleaner has said. I'll often go on the side quietly and say, nah, this, because I don't like it I don't like the animosity. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's productive, right? And you guys were very good with that. You know, your shows and, you know, the Wrestling with Cards one, when you brought your guests on, it was always that kind of thing. I felt that you're sort of getting to the meat of the matter. Like, why is he here? Why does this guy matter? And you always sort of had that explained in each episode. So I thought that was great.
Yeah, I think that also comes from me like consuming content. I don't want to listen to something where you have, let's say, two guests or five guests or whatever, and everybody's like patting each other on the back and saying the same thing. It's like the echo chamber of these thoughts. And I just didn't want that. I don't like listening to that stuff. I like listening to stuff that makes me think, whatever, you know, avenue that's in. And that's what I wanted to bring from the different, you know, if it's a music podcast, a business podcast, just straight up wrestling podcast. And I listened to those, you know, the banter back and forth and the things that it makes you think about. And I was like, let's bring that to wrestling cards. And whether that's getting different guests on, whether I agree or disagree with them, they're valuable for what they do in their segment. Like, it's weird to talk about segment within a segment of wrestling cards because of how niche it is, but it's just the truth. Or, you know, what they're doing for the community from a platform, from a content, from a breaking perspective. Just, you know, bring them on there to get their voice out to other collectors, because again, any nugget of information can spur collectors to either collect a new way, take a different approach to something, think a little bit differently. And ultimately that, like, you know, in my opinion, that's what keeps me going within the hobby. Is if I'm just buying a piece of cardboard, looking at it, putting it in a box or binder, okay, right? But the way that I get to interact with other people doing the same thing, and, you know, bouncing ideas back and forth of ways you can collect or why things are the way they are, that's what makes me keep going every single day.
100%. I agree. Like, I had a very lonely existence for the first 25 years in the hobby because there wasn't that.
Yeah,
And it was only after Tony Vela invited me to come on the burgeoning WTC show. I think it was him in Porto. Then he invited Peck. Then he invited me, and I thought, oh wow, I'm the second guy that he wants to talk to. And from there, that's the enjoyment of the hobby increased tenfold for me, because now
yeah,
it's not just get the card, put it on the wall next. You know, now all of a sudden, you know, because I take it very seriously that Tony and Chuck and myself, we go way back. So we're not talking like 5 years ago. We're talking 25 years ago, and
sure,
there wasn't any of this stuff. You know, we had each other, but that's it. You know, when I walked the National in 2010, people looked at me like I was out my mind. Wrestling cards, you're here talking about that here. Um, so I get what you're saying 100% about the fact that we enjoy this because it allows us to enjoy the overall experience of collecting more. You know,
sure.
they're interchangeable for me. Before we get off the show, which again I don't want to keep gushing over, it's been fantastic. The wrestling with cards. What's the future, Zan? Is there anything? Where's it all going? Is it just going to be more of the same, or?
More of the same from a consistency perspective. You know, as hopefully my schedule changes in the future, hopefully I'll do more live streams. I've found that that's really something I enjoy doing. You know, if you get, you know, because you're getting those live questions just fired at you, and the way that you can react to somebody, or, you know, somebody makes a joke about something, the interaction, it's what we're doing right here, but it, you know, but it's live, and it could be about something, a new release, or a topic that is more, um, maybe not as much evergreen, and it's more of like a present, like, you know, something that just broke, you know, and you're able to talk about that live. Or maybe you're talking about random 1995 WCW cards, and all of a sudden somebody in the chat fires a question at you about, well, what do you think of this new WWE booking decision or something. And it's just fun to interact like that. So hopefully more live stuff, but just continuing to, you know, there's the staple videos that people like, the market watch, which is again totally different than what you guys do, which is I love, because you guys are bringing a different perspective that I enjoy watching than the stuff that I do. Top five, people love that stuff. Interviews, I'm sure you guys know, scheduling
Yeah.
interviews have become harder to do based on people's schedules. But the top five, the market watch, and then I'm just going to start throwing out some random, you know, stuff like, I'm going to AEW in a couple weeks. I have no idea why they're coming to close to me, because it's such a small area. But I'm going to go, and we're going to try to make some content out of that. And, you know, you just never know. I'm going to continue to try to keep the consistency up of 1 to 2 videos a week, and go from there. And you never know what's going to be posted.
Awesome. All right, so that's the video end. That's sort of Zan's claim to fame is the two shows that he did, or the one that he continues to do. But this, after all, is the collector series. So now we're going to shift focus to Zhan Mourning, the card collector. Let's get right into Karrion, because
Sure.
that's your what you're known for in the collectible world. Although not true. I mean, we'll talk about beast mode as well. I've had this conversation with Tony a couple of times. Why Loomis? So I'm gonna throw it back to you. Why Karrion? Of all
Hey,
the people out
I'm
there.
one of the people that totally gets Tony. Like I don't question anything. So this started kind of as a, and I did a whole video on this. You can check out in the archives of the channel. It was kind of a experiment. Like, can you prospect on modern wrestling? So at the time, 2020 Finest had just recently been released, and I, believe it or not, I think it's on the channel still. I ripped a hobby box or a blaster box, and I think if I remember right, there was a Karrion Kross rookie in there. It may have been base or silver. And I was like, I love this guy on NXT. I've watched him here and there within AAA and Impact and the stuff he did before he was in NXT. And I've just always loved the intensity. So I connected with the character on that level. But then I saw the card and I'm like, okay, well, if this is a rookie card, I wonder if I could prospect on this like I see in sports cards. And the answer to that is yes, you can, but it didn't work out so much for him. So I'm like, okay, well, what do I do with these? And then my mind went back to all of this sports card content that I listened to and these deep dives of like somebody who's collecting a random second baseman from the 80s that, never made it big. And these collections that they've built out of these lesser known stars, obviously they're bigger names because they play professionally, but they're not a Jordan or a King Griffey Jr. or, Barry Sanders or somebody like that. So I looked at that. I looked at the enjoyment that they were having. And I was like, you know what? I've got these Karrion Kross cards. I love the talent. I love the look of the cards. I'm just going to go for it. And that's what I did. And then I kind of have taken that. So originally, I'm kind of a completist when it comes to player collecting. That's kind of, if you want to go way back when I was in, real little, when I first really started getting into player collecting, Shaquille O'Neal and Dennis Rodman in basketball. And I wanted one card of every single thing I could get from them. So, Paul, I'm like you and Chuckster, I'm a completist in the sense of the player collecting, not so much the sets.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. And then I was like, you know what? Nobody else. I discovered another sports card content creator, Bo 1 Million Cubs Project, and he has a great YouTube channel, totally different
Has he
than
got
like
there yet,
every.
by the way? Has he hit the million yet?
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
And he's
'Cause I
getting
met him at
close.
the National. I remember
Yeah.
not Tony, the one that just passed, but the Atlantic City one. I met the million guy. And do you remember? Were you with me at that point when we were chatting, when I was chatting with him? I think
Pretty sure I was.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought, Jesus Christ, 1 million cards. Is there such a thing? And he goes, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I took his approach to how many can you get from a quantity perspective, which makes me kind of look like a hypocrite in a way because I did that video we talked about hoarding, but it's different. Like, a lot of I'm like, okay, well, how many? I think I'm up to like 60 or 70 some base Prism cards now, and you're like, why would you want to do that? And it's just
Hang on,
fun
sorry,
to kind of.
excuse me. Are identical cards? Like, do you have any of the exact same cards, same numbers?
Like 60 to 70 of just the base.
So you're not stopping at one.
Oh no, I take everything.
And I'm the same with the Loomis stuff because, like, at one point, Zan sent me he's like, you want anything, right? And I said, yeah, just like what you're doing with Kross, I want it for Loomis. Like, I don't care how many I have of card number 42.
Oh, okay. I didn't get that. I thought you guys were just getting the one and then onto the next.
No, I got a whole binder full. I'm hoarding, baby. I'm hoarding.
Yeah,
same.
That is hoarding.
Yeah, but here's the difference with that. I'm actually in a group.
Indiscriminately.
I'm in a group chat with a few Karrion Kross collectors. I know that's hard to believe. There's a lot of people like, if you go online, which, that's questionable, and look at wrestling opinions on Karrion Kross, it's usually never very good. But there's a small group of us that actually collect him, and I'm all the time saying, hey, if you guys need something that I've got a duplicate of, I'm more than happy to sell it to you at a reasonable price, or, in some cases, maybe just send it to you. And that's a difference in the hoarding thing that I talked about in that video, because I think there's a lot of people that would get that stuff and then they're just like, it's all mine. The ring is mine. And which, okay, that's fine if that's the approach you want to take. But that's just the difference that I'm looking at for this. But
it's easy. It's easier to hoard a more valuable card, isn't it? It's easier.
Yeah.
It's easier to have a bunch of Hogan All-Stars than it is a bunch of, Karrion base cards from now or whatever.
Yep. And the demand's different as well, But
it
was just a different way of collecting.
I didn't realize that you were buying, like, you could have 20 of the exact same card. Because that's not me. I don't need a second card of anything. Once I have one, I don't need two of them, and I certainly don't need a green, red, blue black or anything else.
Oh, the rainbows are so fun to put together.
Yeah. If you're into that, but to me, you know what? I got the fight. I just wanted the card, but I didn't realize. So what's the idea behind that? Like, you guys are going to have a boatload of all these cards just to say you have them, or
Collecting. That's
Or
it. It's just a different way to
or
do
is
it, and
quantity thing?
it's a different way to collect, and it's a extremely affordable, because sometimes people just send like that, it's a breaker or somebody that just has these things in their boxes, and they're like, hey, enjoy your content. I know you like Karrion Kross. I'm going to send you like a couple of Karrion Crosses and a PWE because I just don't want them.
Yeah.
So, or it's stuff I buy a collection, pull out any cross that I come across. Sometimes people want to sell you something in bulk so you can get them at a very affordable price. And it just works out. But again, that goes back to networking and, putting yourself out there of who
I
you
love hearing
collect.
about that. We did the episode with Matt and Adam a few weeks ago, talking about how they go about their Becky collecting. And I think that it's pretty clear that if you do it the way you guys are doing it, if you are mindful of other people in your space, you get it back, and it benefits you you go a lot further in the long run,
Right.
be that way, being mindful that, hey, I've got 8 of these Karrion base cards. Here's a guy that wants one. No big deal for me to have 7 versus 8. Now, you
Right.
wouldn't do that with your 1 of 1, obviously, but
Sure.
for the stuff that, so
What
that's
sucks for
very
me, what sucks for me is when I end up buying, like, I bought a 30,000 card collection of wrestling cards from this guy, and had, that's what Nick was working on, putting, merging stuff. And he goes, "Oh, look, I found this Loomis card." I go, pull it.
cool.
Now I've got these partial sets, and they're all missing that Loomis card. Like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
I got to pull it and put it back in the sets like that, because I got to sell the sets, and so that kind of stinks a little bit.
Right.
Well, another thing I love about going down this path too is, you hear a lot about consolidation and people having lack of focus, buying this new release product, going and buying slabs. Like they're just kind of all over the place, taking that shotgun approach. And Tony, I know you could speak for this too. Like when you start going down this player collector rabbit hole, especially when you're doing like what me and Tony are doing, with you're just trying to get as many as possible, it takes all the noise and just pushes it aside.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I'm having so much more fun now collecting. When Zan and I first talked about this, and he started doing the Karrion Kross, and I just randomly picked somebody myself. I go, well, I'll just take this Loomis guy.
Picking the Nazis.
Yeah. So, and it's just, and I've, to this date, I've still never seen the guy wrestle in my life. So
that's crazy.
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
That blows my mind. Never, the biggest
never seen him
wrestler
wrestle
in the world, and
but hey,
not saying you could walk by the guy on the
but you know
street and
what?
recognize him still.
I'm having so much fun collecting with him. Like, it's just so casual. Like, I have no concerns or cares. Or like, oh no, the new Prism's coming out, I got to collect shiny. I don't care. It's like I just focus on the one Loomis. I get what I get. If I don't get it, I don't get it. Like, people ask, like, how many? I'm not like Zan. Zan has a lot of 1-of-1s for Kross. I don't own a single 1-of-1 of Loomis that I'm aware of, that I can think of. And I've seen him at the National last year, Paul. You and I walked by. And he bought two Loomis, 1-of-1s he had. I took a picture of him, just so that's probably all I'm ever going to see. Is, I'm not overly concerned about. I don't have to have the 1-of-1s. I'm just excited about what I have. If I'm going to have, my biggest thing is, like, I don't know, 2022 Revolution,
Galactics.
Only 4 Loomises ever come to the market. I own all 4.
There you go. That's another thing that I think is very underrated about going about this style of collecting. You see the Rock Prism Black 1-of-1. See the Vince Superfractor. You get these wrestling collectors out here that want to, flaunt these cards because they're amazing. But when you, and Tony, like, I know you can speak for this from the Galactic standpoint, but I can speak from it from a Transcendent Superfractor, from a Prism Black 1-of-1. You get to experience these same levels of products that these people talk about at a much more affordable price that also fits your style of collecting for what you're doing. It's just, it's an amazing way to go about collecting.
I get that. There's a reason why I pick Loomis, because it's not collecting Rock. It's not collecting Roman.
I get that it's a better collecting experience for you, Tony. You just said that, it takes away the noise. Like, for example, I just did the Immaculate Base set. 97 different purchases to get 100 cards. Not fun, work, hassle, poor Chuck, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I did it only because I'm the dude that does that. You know what I mean? Wouldn't have done it, and now it looks like there's going to be another Immaculate. And I'm like, oh no, Tony.
Yeah.
And is it fun? It's fun at the end. You know, when I can say,
Sure.
haha, here's all 100.
Yeah,
No,
but it's a great
it's
sense of
expensive, it's
accomplishment from that
frustrating, things get
standpoint.
lost. You know, like in the collecting of the 100, 2 or 3 cards got lost, and we had to order them again. And you know, if you're doing what you guys are doing, you don't have that. You don't have that grief. You know, so I get that.
That's not true. I did have a NXT 1/1 auto of Kross get lost in the
Oh,
mail.
did you? Okay.
Yep, I finally got it back like 3 or 4 weeks later. They ended up putting it in the wrong PO box, and the customer unfortunately did not see that it's not their name on a package this big and take
Yeah.
it back to the post office. But I got it back eventually.
But you got it back, and
Yep.
just as easily you could not have gotten it back, and then that would have
Yep.
been that. You know,
And
that
for a 1 of
was
1, like
lost.
that's
Yeah.
but that's the thing. Like you know, it's I don't know. I just have this different mindset. Like that was unfortunate. That whole experience was unfortunate, and I was like, you know what? This sucks. It's a 1 of 1. I may never see it again. But you know what? I'm just going to continue doing my thing. Like I'm not going to get on Twitter and blast Tops or whoever for my bad day. Like I'm just going to keep going and having fun. And that's
No, I never ripped on Panini once for making my life hell.
No, you don't. No, I'm not saying that.
It
But
is,
you know, we all see these community members that want to take it out on other people.
Yeah. No, that's a cop out in my mind. We're in this hobby, and if you decide to chase something, you've made that decision. You've decided how you're going to spend your money.
Yep.
And you know, it's my fault that I decided to put myself through the immaculate thing. And again, now that it's done, I'm glad I did it. But yeah, I think that the recent product has been fantastic, even though I'm invested in all of it. I don't shit over Panini or AEW for that matter, because I buy it all. Now, Zan, let's get into something interesting I want to talk to you about. When we first met and I first on your show, you still had a day job and you were sort of fitting in your videos around your work schedule, but you also had your YouTube store or your eBay store, Beast Mode you call it. And I'm happy to report last year at some point you made the plunge to call it a day with your day job and go full time into.
Not quite. That's actually like hopefully within a few months I can do that.
That's something that I remember we talking about.
Yep.
Talk to us about that. How Beast Mode and that side business, again, you being as a collector, not just as a Karrion PC collector, but just, you know, I look behind you and you've got all your shit. You got your figures.
Yeah, and that's just the stuff that's listed. I'm sure you guys saw my post. I bought over 100,000 cards and some memorabilia. Most of it's sports, but there's some wrestling and non-sport stuff behind me that's like stacked way up there. It's like over 100,000 cards, and that was an experience. That's another thing I'm going to make a video on and post it on the channel. Just my experience with having to deal with that much quantity and meeting a collector across country that was willing to drive and meet me somewhere to
make it work.
That whole thing. So it'll be a fun video to kind of talk through that.
Shout out to Caleb.
Yep. Collecting with Caleb, one of the premier indie card content creators out there. Speaking of content creation. Again, this goes back to Gary Vee, and he was like, sports card flipping, blah, blah, blah. And that gets a bad rap, I think. But it's like wrestling. I was always interested in the business of the business, and I've always been that way with the hobby as well. That being said, I did not set out to start this as I'm going to sell cards full time and open, we saw a lot of like fly by night people in the sports card world come in, and a few wrestling, but mainly sports, kind of come in wanting to flaunt these big cards and talk about flipping and investing. And I do some of that too, but I'm, more so putting the thought out there just for people to think, not really, telling you what to do. So it originally started by just selling the stuff I don't want. I specifically remember the first 5-row box I bought of junk. I found a Rock magazine card in there, which I no longer have because somebody reached out to me and wanted to buy it. But I was like, okay, well, I'm keeping that. Not interested in all this other stuff. What do I do? And I started again watching Bo 1 Million Cubs and watching some other content creators, and they were talking about there's actually a market for junk wax base or modern base or silvers or the lower, like under $20 cards. There's still a big market for that on eBay. So I was able to just start this store by getting rid of the stuff I didn't want, right? All of a sudden, that's then like I find myself having fun sorting, listing, shipping, like all these super mundane tasks that people say in the hobby they don't like dealing with, which is why they like send it to a consigner or send it to ComC or something like that. But I started really enjoying that aspect of it. Tony, I'd love to get your opinion too here in a second on running your business, and because a lot of people, they're like, oh, I run my business, but it's a lot of work. Well, yeah, it's a lot of work, but in my opinion, if you're enjoying what you're doing, you're never that you're never working a day in your life kind of thing. And that's kind of where I've gotten. And I'm seeing my sales go up every single year, even though the overall market has kind of gone down. And it's led to all kinds of extra things, you know, like I said, give me a 5-row box, sit down for the afternoon, start sorting. What does that allow me to do? Enjoy all of these cards from all of these different segments of the hobby. You know, I'll pull Dick Tracy cards, Ninja Turtles, some 90s or 80s baseball, and it just sends me back. It's the same way the reason we collect. I'm going through these boxes and I get to remember all of these memories through these things. The good part is I don't have to keep them. So I can just focus on my signed wrestling all-star set, my Karrion Kross stuff, any of those kind of one-offs that I do. And then I get to have that same experience with these things, but then pass them on to other collectors. And then I've also, on the flip side, somebody might look at what I do and just say, okay, well, you just like to make money and you like to sell things. Well, that's the whole goal. But you'll sell a card and somebody will reach out to you and say, hey, I just bought these cards from you. Thanks for the good experience. These are for my kids. We just got them into collecting. And I'm like, boom. Like they're like, I start finding it's kind of like content. You know, you'll have somebody reach out to you. Hey, this video really helped me. Inadvertently, you find out that it's joyful to kind of help other people through these different experiences that you didn't kind of intend to start with.
I got turned on to that notion from Mike Summer, and he's a big bulk guy, and
Yeah.
he goes around the country finding huge lots, and the term he used was fast nickels versus slow dimes.
Yep.
You know, sometimes you can buy a shit ton of stuff and you're just looking for that one in there that's going to pay for a third of the entire lot you just bought, and then the rest of it's gravy.
Right.
And he was saying the same thing. The fun for him was going through these massive lots and just boom, there's a rock, or there's a this, or there's a that. That's going to be worth more than the 2 or 3 cents he paid for it. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, like that, you have to, if you're going to do this and run it like a business, you got to run it like a business. And I think a lot of times there are certain segments of the hobby, be it sports or wrestling cards, that kind of look at people that do breaks or look at people that do eBay store or, you know, any kind of selling that they do. And I think there's some people that look down at that. You're not a true collector, which me and Tony have done a whole episode on that.
That's
But
nonsense.
and yeah, it's complete like you know, are you gonna go to a business and tell a person that they're not a true, you know, food server because they're serving food to make money? I mean, that may be kind of a weird analogy, but it's a business of a business that's interesting to learn. And the more I do it, the more I'm connecting with other people. And it's been a unexpected fun experience. And you know, the fact that I'm at this point where I could potentially do this, you know, just full time,
Right.
that could potentially free up more time to do videos, to do, you know, have more guests
Look at
on and
look at
stuff like
Tony here
that.
in
So
a store. This was, when I
yeah,
first started talking to Tony, he said one day I'm going to open a wrestling store. That was 4 years ago, and now he's done it.
yeah,
And he's living the ups and downs of doing that thing. But it's not work if you love it. People say that. You made a good point there that I relate to it. When I came out of university, I started a business, and I've never gone to work since then. I've never had a boss. I've never had anyone. When someone tells me what to do that's dumber than me, I get chills down my spine. So it's like I always sort of do my own thing, and you've got no basis to complain about life at all when you're
yeah,
completely in control of what you're doing and how you do it. And you can come and go whenever you want. Now, the successful person doesn't come and go whenever they want. They're there first thing in the morning. They're there till the last hour of the night. Like you say, Zan, you could be spending a night doing nothing but doing this with packages going out. But you like that, not because
yep,
you enjoy sticking packages, but because you're in the card world, you're in the wrestling world, you're in this hobby that we enjoy. So I
yeah.
agree
Because
with that.
while I'm doing
100%.
that, I'm listening to a hobby podcast, or I'm
Yeah.
listening to a
Yeah.
wrestling pod, or I'm watching wrestling. Like it's just all tied together. And Tony, going back to you, like, do you? Maybe you have a different opinion than I do, but do you enjoy all that kind of behind the scenes business of running your business stuff? Because I do, but I'd like to hear what you think because I know yours is a little bit different. But
I do and I don't. There's some things that are just sort of mundane that I don't like. But overall, it's I come in, I open the door every day, it's like that, and I look at all the inventory I have now compared to a year ago. I see that old episode of Card Life TV I did, here in the store,
yeah,
and I look at it, I go, wow, it's embarrassing. Look at how plain the store looks. It's so empty, and now it's so full looking. And my wife keeps me grounded in that sense, going like, look at all you've accomplished this last year. Like,
Mhm.
look at our numbers. Our numbers. We are month over month doing better. I mean,
That's
If it's
great.
even if it's $25 or $2,500, we're still doing better and are maintaining a level. And we're building a community here, and that's the biggest thing I get out of it too. Is I enjoy the process. I've always enjoyed the process. I can bitch and complain and feel miserable about things sometimes, but in the grand scheme of it all, I enjoy the entire process, because at the end, when you get a review from someone, like the other day, Nick came in the store one day for my birthday last year and decorated the store when I came back from I was out of town for another event. And I came in here, my back room here was all decorated with wrestling stuff like that, and a leftover bag of like parties, like balloons and hangers like that, leftover stuff he didn't use. And a customer came in, he's like, man, like, I'm looking to get some stuff. We're throwing a wrestling themed birthday party for my son. And I ordered some stuff from Amazon. I don't even gonna make it in time. I'm so stressed out. I go, uh, I got all this stuff here in the back. You can have it all. It's like that. If you want it, you go, really? Like, yeah, you can have it all. And gave it to him. And then he leaves you a review up on Google saying, you literally saved my son's birthday party. It's like that with that stuff. I will forever be a customer. And so those things, like, it gets me a little chills around. You feel good about that. Like, what I'm doing matters,
Yeah.
and I enjoy what I'm doing anyways. So
It's
it's a
great when you
win-win.
get love like that. It's not always having a great day profit wise, because
No,
money, I say this often. There's been times in my life where I've done okay and I've had a lot of money. And then there's been times where I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to make it to the end of the week. And you know
yep,
what? My life has been the same. I've not been on a higher plane of existence when my bank account was bigger. You know
yeah,
what I mean? I, I'm still into wrestling. I'm still into playing bass in the band. I never grew up really, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And money isn't all about it. It's all about what you just identified, Tony, the fact that you made this guy's day and the love you get out there. We
Yeah.
get a lot of love, the three of us combined in the wrestling card hobby, because of this work that we do and
yeah.
have been doing for a couple of years.
Well, hell, Paul and you and I have been doing it for, with the whole wrestling card worlds like that, in this market, in this hobby.
For some time.
There was nobody around. There was nobody
No,
around when I started WTC. There was nobody around, and
nobody.
then all of a sudden, when you put the price cut out, there was nobody else around doing
Just
it. I
just
mean,
the two of us.
it was
You know?
just, and you kind of, you keep doing it, and we've always said about this hobby, we do it because of the love of the hobby. It's just, it's
And we've all kept
a
this
labor of
going, and
love.
now look at all the other stuff that's out there. That's the whole
Yeah,
Right.
point.
And none of us
yeah,
have gotten rich off of it, like
no,
none of us have gone out and bought PSA 10s of Hogan's and stuff that we've secured our future with. I mean, because that stuff isn't gettable anymore. But the idea is that, first of all, there's a friendship that
yep,
we've developed, amongst ourselves. There's this kinship, and there's this sort of professional respect. Like I've got great respect, Zan, for the content, and I think I don't know if you're going to remember this, but the very first time I reached out to you, and you're probably not going to remember this because you probably wouldn't have known who I was, but I congratulated on your video and I said that you were an asset to our hobby,
No, I
and
remember. Yep, because
yeah,
I knew who you were, because I had
well, did you? Because I was
yeah.
wondering, I was thinking to myself, this guy's going to, who's this guy that thinks that
No, I didn't know you like I know you now, but
sure.
I knew the
But I
price guide,
wanted to
and
let you
like,
know, as an old school guy that's been around for a while, that this stuff is great, dude. Like, this is really good. And part of me was like, shit, Tony and I should be doing this. And ultimately we did. But you were the guy that took that first foot forward. And a lot of people like to lay claim is this is the reason why our hobby went up as much as it did during COVID and then sort of resettled. And I like to talk about these videos. This is a big part of it for me. What you've done, Zan, what Card Foundation has done, what Tom has done, what Retro Mike and Anthony is doing, and of course what me, Tony, and Adam and Ryan are doing on this channel. Um, and again, it's a labor of love
yeah,
first. We don't make money at this. I have some cards that are worth money, and if I ever decide to sell one 30 years in, then maybe. But that's not what it's for about. But I'm happy to see that, Tony, you're in a store that eventually, sooner than later, will feed your family. Zan, you're going to make that move, going from part-time to full-time for beast mode. And
yep,
and again, you know, I want to encourage you guys to keep going, because I've had many different businesses, and some successful, some not, some long, some short, and life is the same. Money. There's no saying that people that say money doesn't buy happiness doesn't have it, but I disagree with that. Like I think that you can get to a certain stage of contentment in life, which you guys have obviously done, because we're not kids anymore. We're not 20,
sure,
um, and do this. And for me, again, and we've said this many a time, the juice I get from this is the personal fun I have doing it, chatting with you about wrestling cards, because this was something that I didn't have, nor did Tony. We had each other, but we didn't have a community like we have now. Like I put out a card set of 100 people last year, and I could probably still put more.
Yeah.
You've had hundreds of guests on, and these are people that might not have been introduced to the wrestling card hobby or our world had it not been for our efforts. The three of us. So again, not only to Zan but to you, Tony, for all the consistent work that you've done. You're sick again today, and yet here you are. We did our last episode that's coming out soon. You could barely talk, and there you were. So
getting better, man. Getting better as best I can. So
yeah.
And this is the first time I got to see Zan one-on-one here in quite some time.
Yeah, it's kind of a reunion. Like I'm kind of busting in on your reunion. It should just be the two of you guys. But I thought, well, this will be neat because one, the collector series is about collectors. And Zan, I often say this guy needs no introduction, but it's true. You of all people don't need an introduction. Because everyone knows who you are in this hobby. And
well, I'm just happy to be part of this series. I enjoy watching the series and seeing new faces or seeing old faces that maybe are talking about something within their collecting or the way that they think about something that we haven't heard.
This series isn't unique. This is what you guys have been doing throughout. The collector series is just a fancy way of the same thing that Wrestling with Cards was doing 3 years ago. WTC, sometimes I forget that, oh yeah, you interviewed Veligan twice. Oh yeah, you did interview Adrian Brown 3.5 years ago or whatever it was. You've done
it still always just brings a new and fresh perspective though, and we've got new people coming in all the time.
Yeah, it's just fresh content because people want something new that they haven't seen before.
Yeah.
And you guys are at the forefront of that, honestly. If it wasn't for Zhan Mourning and Tony Vela, I don't think that there would be a YouTube wrestling world. So hats off to you guys both, not just you, Zhan, you and
Thank
Tony.
you.
And then of course you guys got together, which solidified, okay, these are the dudes that are going to bring us this sort of information and get us from here to here. And you've done it, and like you say now, we look around and there's a lot of people in this hobby that might not have been there before. But, I take pride in the fact that, our efforts have somewhat, to a degree, led to the current situation.
I'd always said, too, about the Worlds Collide stuff. Like I said, everything else can go away. I just want to keep doing the Worlds Collide thing. and the thing that went away was the Worlds Collide. Like, that was my guaranteed pick.
We said that about the monthly, too, that, we enjoy doing the monthly. That's the one thing that we're never going to get rid of. And then sure enough, we decided, you know what? This is getting a bit, let's slow it down a little bit. We are going to come back.
It's life creates a lot of chaos sometimes. So
that's it. That's exactly what Tony said.
Well, Tony's schedule is tight with the store, and I think a lot of our guests know that because a lot of times we have to go back and forth 5-6 times to nail a time.
Yeah.
Luckily, me being self-employed, working from home, I can be flexible. You know what I mean? If I'm going out with clients, no, but generally I'm upstairs in the office, so I can make it work. And I've been happy to sort of do this with Tony because there's been a few times, and Tony will tell you that he's like, "Oh fuck, just do this one on your own." And it's like, no, I don't want to. The series is the two of us.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. So we're gonna by hook or crook make it work.
I got to get more in tune to like using this thing to record now instead of just sitting here at the store. Yeah. So.
Yeah, Tony's right. That's the whole reason that Worlds Collide is not currently going on, and it's just as much my fault or Tony. Like we have equal share, and because like I work overnights, so like I got home at like 3 a.m. this morning, and I was up at like 9 to get on this, and then as soon as I get done with this, I've got like stacks of orders I got to get out. I got to get it's just a never ending thing. Yep. So to try to cram in, time to record with that while spending time with friends or family or, working. Because I would say like if you combine my eBay and my regular job, it's easily like 90 hours a week of work. So to try to cram that into, in and around things, it's just really tough.
And I find that there's a lot of actual wrestling to watch nowadays.
It's ridiculous. You can't keep up with it. It's
crazy. Like last night, all of a sudden, World had to stop at 7 o'clock for a press conference.
Yep.
And couldn't miss it.
You guys got to learn how to use social media.
You even said it dragged you back in, and I'm like,
no. Tony's right. I started taking the Tony route, and it's been much like I'm able to keep up with it a lot more, but I still miss those days of just that anticipation of waiting for Monday night or that anticipation on a Sunday afternoon waiting for the pay-per-view. Yep. It's still there sometimes, right? But there's just so much out there now that it's hard to.
I've always treated social media since I got on social media as a way to keep myself. Social media has become my new sports center.
Yeah.
Just for wrestling.
Yep.
So I get all the highlights, and if someone says, "Dude, you missed this incredible promo, you missed this incredible match," I will go seek it out and then watch it. Yeah. So I go, "Oh God, they did right." So otherwise, it's just boom, 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 boom. I'm all caught up. here in the
Yep.
store. Like I'm going to open the store here 3 minutes ago. And I'm going to go, I'm going to turn the TV on. I'm going to, whatever's the recap from the previous days. That's how I get caught up.
I like
Yep.
to still watch it. I don't watch Raw live. I don't watch any of this stuff live out of favor to Susan because there's just so much of it. It would drive her insane if like
Yeah.
3 nights a week we're watching wrestling. So the deal is that we don't do wrestling in the evenings. That's her time. That's our time. And because I work from home, I'm watching Raw and SmackDown like in the afternoons at 1, 2 o'clock, whilst
Yep.
working on the tablet, whilst working on the notebook. It's in the background because I like it. It's like music to me. Just
Yep.
wrestling, hearing
Yeah,
it.
I was listing
But
cards
there's so
last
much
night
of it
and
now.
watching a match from 1988 Memphis on YouTube. So
Yeah, with the YouTube stuff, shit,
yep.
you could get up in the morning and watch wrestling. It's like going back and watching old 90s rock videos, you know, you can
Yep.
keep yourself entertained for hours and
Yeah.
hours and hours at a time with that stuff. Before we sign up, we sign off, guys, because we're getting to the hour mark. We like to do anecdotes at the end, Zan, where we talk about sort of stories from the field. Anything that comes to mind of a particularly fun sort of episode or something that happened to you want to share?
Just I wouldn't say interesting. It's kind of things I've learned, and hopefully, I got two things that I want to put out there that hopefully people are going to take and run with it. The first one is networking. I would not have anything I have right now, be it the talking with you guys, the cards in my collection, inventory for the eBay store. None of that exists if I don't put myself out there and start talking to people. I know that's hard for some people to do, and certain people maybe don't want to do it, and that's okay. You just want to collect your stuff, have fun. Cool, no problem. But I've half of these, we talked about Dan, the great curator. So here's an interesting story that ties in with what I'm talking about. I've been looking at this Karrion Kross Transcendent Superfractor auto for like a year, and this guy will not budge on the price. The next thing I know, Dan is at the Dallas Card Show, and that guy's got it in his case. And I'm like, you got to do this. So Dan actually, without even talking to me, made a deal for a bunch of bulk wrestling. There was like, I know there was a Becky, like I think it was a Topps Chrome Gold Becky and some other stuff in there. So he worked out a deal with a seller and then contacted me directly and was very fair with the price based on, it was maybe a quarter. I paid like a quarter of the price for what this guy wanted on eBay. But if I would not have networked with Dan and had that connection and, built out different networks of people, I can talk to this guy that can talk to this guy that can talk to this dealer or whatever. I don't have these Karrion Kross cards. Prime example too. I posted it. Yeah, that's up there on the shelf. I got another Prism Black that it's from the top tier insert set, and I would not have got that if it wasn't for like 4 or 5 other people tagging me, messaging me, DMing me on Twitter saying, "Hey, this Facebook group over here has this card for you." Oh, okay. So tying that all together. So I say all that to say, like, Brett McGrath from Stacking Slabs, shout out to him as well. He's put out it's networking within the hobby has become a hobby hack. You can get the things you need and the things you need to get done through networking.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you're not a member of all of these different types of wrestling card collecting communities, get out there, just start talking to people, ask questions, build a relationship. Don't just jump into somebody's DMs and go, "What's this worth, bro?" Don't do that. Start up a conversation.
I get that a lot.
Yeah. Why do you collect the way you do? What does this set mean? What is this grade compared to this grade? Stuff like that. And over time, you just build that network. And to kind of tie into that, the second thing I've learned, and this is through content creation, starting a business, going down a collecting rabbit hole of something that people say is a bad investment, whatever. Don't be afraid to do whatever you want to do. Put yourself, just go for it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? If you're not hurting anybody or you're not putting yourself in any kind of major financial bind, collect the way you want to collect, start making videos or podcasts if that's what you want to do. Again, get involved with groups, start being a part of things, go to the national, go to your local card shop, start talking to everybody. So, over time through buying, selling, trading, making content, all this stuff, putting yourself out there, don't be afraid to fail, don't be afraid of anything, and just keep networking with people and build the relationship because, Paul, as you said earlier, if we're just in our rooms, in our basements, in our grandma's house, collecting these pieces of cardboard with men in their underwear on it by ourselves, it's not as much fun.
Speaking of the
100%,
national,
100%.
speaking of the nationals, Zan, are we ever going to see you there?
You know what? I think I told Tony this. I was actually going to go last year. And based on my schedule, here we go again. I was going to fly in, go to the main event, and that first day, and then come back. And the way that my scheduling worked, I have to currently with my job, if I'm gonna like take a day off, I got to get that in like a month or two in advance. And the main event just didn't come together officially until past that time, so I couldn't make it happen. But I'm not opposed to going. Like, I love going to local card shows, like the 25 to 75 dealer shows that are a little bit smaller, as you can get good deals. But I would love to go to the national just to go. And
Meet everybody.
especially if we're going to have a community event within wrestling, one of these days I'll probably go, but I just don't know when. Probably Chicago. That'd be easier for me to get to.
It looks like there's going to be a main event each year going forward. We've laid the seeds for something with the panel and with the main event that there's enough of a draw to get a bunch of us. But the true benefit is meeting guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just
Yeah,
getting,
and I've only met but like in person, and this may sound sad, but just based on my location, I live in the middle of the country, in the middle of nowhere. Collecting with Caleb from the YouTube channel, he drove across country, and then inadvertently I found out that Evan's on tour, which many people know on Twitter. He lives about 30 minutes from me, so I've met him several times to just talk about things. Hopefully we're going to hook up at the AEW show that's coming up locally. I buy collections from him, his stuff that he breaks that he doesn't want anymore. So it is fun. It like to put these social media people that you interact with on a regular basis and then finally meet them in person. And I know you guys know that based on your experience at the
there's no
national.
excuse to not do it. I'm in
Yeah.
Canada and there's no one around. I got Alex here and a couple of Canadian guys, but you guys are all down there. So it's
Yeah.
like, well, you bring
Why
Moses.
are we all down here? Maybe you're all up there.
Yeah, well, I've come to you. One day I'll get you up here, Tony, but
I
You
came
never
up
know,
there.
Paul.
I came up there. I came
You
up
did.
to, well, at least I
you came to
came
Hamilton.
to
Yeah, you did.
Hamilton.
You never know, Paul. There may actually be way more collectors than you know of. We just got to get them to kind of come out of the
And
woodwork and
that's an
talk with each
important
other.
point, like
Yeah.
you mentioned that because there are a lot of guys out there that collect wrestling that aren't on Facebook, aren't on Twitter,
Yeah.
don't know about the efforts that we do, don't watch these videos, and have substantial collections. And
Yep.
I get surprised. I'll meet someone, they'll tell me what they got. I'm like, well, where you been? You're not aware of what we do and who we are and what we've done in the community, but it's all fantastic. And it's great you guys talk about the love. I'm a bit jealous, I'll be honest with you, because I don't get that. No one's ever going to find a base set and hold it for me because it's not the same thing as a Loomis card or a Karrion
Sure.
card. So, but Tony, you got anything else for Zan before we wrap it up?
No, man. I'm sure I can text him a little bit later. I think we got something brewing. I think from my
Maybe.
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 I feel the text message I got is like that.
Been a
Maybe I
while.
go, hmm?
It's been a
What?
while since we've had something with the two of you guys. I'm sure the community would love
I
to
miss
see
it.
maybe
I miss
maybe a
it.
reunion
Me too.
Worlds Collide,
Outside of having my monthlies with Pulse like that, I mean the only person I miss actually doing a regular thing with has been Zan. So it's a friendship that I've developed because of this hobby. This hobby and networking the way it has brought us to this moment right now. So and
it's great.
It's great.
Well, again, because of what we have in common, it's a relatable thing that no one in our personal worlds probably can relate to. And
No.
go out there, we have to go
No.
out there to each other, to find that love, to find that camaraderie, to find that sort of
No, because there's been
connection.
moments. There's been moments between back when we're really doing a lot of Worlds Collide stuff. Like there've been moments where it's like, I know Zan, you've sent me messages like feeling a little like,
What are we doing?
I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Why are we doing this?
Because
Like,
the
why are we
feedback
doing this?
wasn't immediate, right? I remember you'd be a little bit disappointed because we'd be doing this stuff and we couldn't get feedback. But we know what we have to do, guys, is step back and look at the sum total of everything that's been done.
Yep.
And look at where we were, Zan, when you did your first episode. Tony, when you and Porto sat down that first time, to where we are today. To the myriad of content that's out there, not only on this channel, but with what you're doing, Zan, and what everyone else is doing, and there's more guys coming. I just did an interview last week for a new guy in the UK that's coming out soon. So it's all growing, and I think it's
the amount of new collectors that have come in, just no matter what they're collecting, and you could say a lot of this has to do with indie cards or Panini or AEW as being new products, but the more new collectors were coming in, I don't want to say validates, but it kind of keeps me going like, okay, maybe I don't have as much time as I used to, but it still pushes me to put out some sort of content because I know that there's more people coming in. It's going to help somebody.
Well, you were the guy that was screaming for it for the longest time,
Yeah.
more so than anyone else. I remember, Zan, you would often sign off your show saying, hey, if you've got something to contribute, if you've got something to say, by all means, all you need is a notebook and a Zoom application, and away you go.
And I still feel that way.
Yeah.
I still feel like there's not enough wrestling card content out there because there's so many different avenues you could go
Getting
down.
better. getting
Yeah,
better, but we're not done by any stretch. But again, you don't build in one day. But I'm very
sure.
proud of what the group of us have managed to accomplish over this time. Yeah, there's been
Definitely.
bullshit. There's been atmosphere and bullshit amongst some guys, but you get that anyways, and we chalk it up to growing pains anyways. You're not a real community until guys start scrapping, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Tony, anything
and
else?
I learned over the years that through collecting, like all these other people, I can disagree with their opinions, but it doesn't mean I don't think they're important in some facet to what we've kind of built and what we continue to do.
I agree
Like,
100%. Just because I don't agree with you or you don't
yeah,
agree with me doesn't mean that I'm not going to be your friend. That doesn't mean I'm not going to talk to you and respect what you have to say.
yeah, yeah. Even the
Tony,
people, like, I'm sure there's people within our community. They're kind of going to be faceless here, but they'll probably come in and thumbs down my videos or leave a comment about something. I'm like, okay, well,
It happens all the time.
that's too bad, but
yeah,
I
but you know
still
what? They're
think you're a
watching it.
contributing member
You
of
know,
the
if
hobby.
they're watching it. If they're going to kind
That's
of give you a
true.
thumbs down or have something to say, it means that they've watched the whole thing.
Yep.
And I appreciate that because, like we only get 200-300 views, if that, on these things. It's not a ton, but that kind of keeps it at a level where it's not serious. I don't have to worry about what I'm wearing. I don't have to worry about what I'm saying. None of my real estate clients up here are ever going to see this, because this is
Well,
very,
that's a
very,
couple hundred people you were able to help that maybe didn't have a resource otherwise.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And let me just say again, thanks to you, Zan, as we wrap this up for everything that you've done specifically with the content stuff. You were the pioneer, like I said at the outset. You've driven a lot of the conversation. You've done a fucking bang up job of all your work. And,
Thank you.
and I've said to Tony many, many times, and Tony will vouch for this, that Zan just gets it. It's just such a pleasure to watch his work. Anything else,
Well, I
Tony, for
appreciate
the
it.
man before we let him go?
No, I gotta run.
You got to run. You got to go open your store.
Yep.
I'm not going to give our coordinates. You know where we are.
Yep.
Guys, thanks very much for watching. We will see you on
If
the next
anybody needs to know
episode.
where anybody on this screen right now how to find them,
Yeah, you've
there's a
missed
problem.
it. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.